Ferdinand, the story catcher. A long, long time ago, stories flew through the air like birds, butterflies, falling leaves or balloons. If you stretched out your arms, you could catch one, just like that. Everyone in the village loved stories. They told stories when they got up, and they told stories when they went to bed. They told stories all day long. Ferdinand was the best at catching stories. He grabbed them gently and popped them on the end of his tongue. Then he told them again and again. But one day, a wild wind started to blow. It flattened everything in its path. For 3 days and 3 nights, the storm raged. It pulled up trees by their roots and blew roofs off houses. People took shelter as best they could. When the storm was over, Ferdinand and the others came out of their hiding places and saw a terrible sight. The village was completely destroyed. All that was left were piles of bricks and wood, branches and roof tiles. In the mess, tiny bits of stories floated around, all muddled up. The village had to be rebuilt. Everyone helped. From morning till night, they nailed, sawed, cleared and repaired. They built brick walls, made new wooden doors and tiled the roofs. Ferdinand went off to town to buy seeds for the gardens. While he was gone, the villagers carried on clearing up. They collected all the muddled up bits of stories, but they didn't know what to do with them. In the end, they decided they could live without stories. So they took the tiny bits of stories to the edge of the village. Then they threw them in a deep hole and forgot all about them. Ferdinand came back with seeds for everyone to plant. Life slowly went back to normal, almost like before, or so it seemed. People carried on working, sleeping, eating, and going about their business, but they didn't smile anymore. They became sadder and sadder, so sad that they didn't have anything to say to each other anymore. When they met, they just sighed. At last, Ferdinand realized what the problem was. The villagers needed stories to make life more fun. So Ferdinand climbed the highest hill and stretched out his arms as high as he could until his shoulders ached. But he didn't catch a thing, not even a tiny bit of a story. They had all disappeared. Then, as Ferdinand listened, he thought he could hear whispering. It seemed to be coming from outside the village. Early the next morning, Ferdinand decided to track down the whispering sound. He came to a big pile of white stones. Past the stones, there was a deep hole. Ferdinand shivered. As he got closer to the edge of the hole, the whispering became louder. Ferdinand's heart was beating fast. He tied together some pieces of string and ribbon to make the longest rope ever. He tied a hook to one end. Then he lowered the hook down to the bottom of the hole, hoping to catch some stories. Ferdinand slowly pulled up the rope. His hands trembled. At last the hook appeared out of the darkness. When Ferdinand looked more closely, he saw a tiny piece of a story on it. He smiled. He gently took it in his fingers and popped it in his mouth. He rolled it around under his tongue and slowly the tiny piece of a story came to life.
Martha woke up late. It was already midday and the rooster hadn't crowed.
Ferdinand heard it whispering and was happy. After that, Ferdinand spent all his time fishing for stories and putting them back together again. Each time he finished another story, he invited all his neighbours to his house. He told the stories over and over to anyone who wanted to hear them. The more he told the stories, the better they became. Soon, everyone was smiling again. As people listened to Ferdinand, they remembered their own favourite stories, which they then began to tell. From that day on, Ferdinand's house was always open to anyone who passed by, young, old, big or small. From morning till night, people enjoyed telling, retelling and listening to all the best stories in the world.